Well, I'm an Albertan, happily married with 4 boys. I'm a lawyer by profession and actually a patriot because I'm seeing the kind of deterioration, if you will, of our country, constitutionally, legally, our 2-tier policing system, our bloating debt, $2.5 trillion. We don't have a budget, and I'm looking and I'm saying this system's not working. Albertans have been tipping on the issue of whether they should be independent for a long time. And now with a sinking Canada, I think it's time for Alberta to move forward and move towards its independence, because actually I love our country. I'd like to see our country all together, but we have an ideological subversion that is taking advantage of a broken system. And the only way that we're really going to move forward in Alberta is to be that one place where there's a beachhead for liberty, freedom, and establish a place that's working, and then we can actually talk about fixing the rest of the country.
Some of the questions that I've heard are, why the United Party of Canada when we're talking about Alberta independence?
Beautiful question. I mean, I think the seeds of what I just said are the answer. There is a commitment. I believe we have a great nation and we have a great people, and I think we should be together. But what I'm seeing is a constitution that's not working. I'm seeing a Charter of Rights and Freedoms that we saw basically become irrelevant in relation to the convoy. All my life, I've watched elections be decided before people in Alberta and BC had even finished voting. We have an activist Supreme Court, and that central system that was built up in terms of the BNA Act or the 1867 Constitution was designed to have the West subsidize central Canada, and things have changed. And I think that what I'm doing is I'm saying the way to actually reopen this discussion is not to undertake all the discussions that we need to about meeting the conditions of change within our Constitution, because we're never going to agree those issues. And I think now when we hear Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney talking about Canada becoming a post-national state where our sovereignty and the control of us goes beyond the elected officials that we have. We're ruled by someone else. When we hear about Canada becoming part of a new world order, when we look at the fact that we have Canadians voting for 11 MPs who or are the agents of foreign interference or actually proper spies, they're working for other governments, I start to say, you know what, let's be serious and recognize that we have a broken system. And there's this whole tussle going on right now about who's going to handle the hot potato of foreign interference. The Liberals clearly want to see the country destabilized because we're getting poorer, we're losing our resiliency, we're becoming more dependent on the government. And the Conservatives are saying we can't get the security clearance. But listen, we have to recognize on this discussion about a broken Canada, we have to recognize and see that legislation that covers Pierre Poilievre in releasing that security information, or at least looking at it to assess it if he hasn't seen it, is Section 15 of the Foreign Interference and Security of Information Act. And if he releases that in the public interest, like we would expect he would to protect us and our sovereignty, he has a full and complete defense. So I'm saying there are games being played, whatever area you want to talk, activist Supreme Court, 2-tier policing, the impossibility to ever get any consensus on a constitutional reform. All of these issues that I've mentioned all point to the fact that we're continuing to move towards $1 trillion of payments from Alberta since 1960, and we're having a more and more broken nation. And so that's why I'm talking about Alberta independence, because it's the only place in Canada, Alberta is the only place in Canada that has the strength, resiliency, tenacity, wealth, faith, maybe, and grit to actually step out and say, we're going to do this differently. And if we establish a constitutional republic, we entrench our inalienable rights under God, and build a nation where those rights can't be undermined by activist courts, we will have a flourishing nation. We will have the wealth that we should have. And we will have a small government that actually serves the people. And when we set up a model of government that's actually predicated upon truth and justice, the rest of the country will be looking in, because the wheels are going to come off the rest of the nation when we stop our subsidies and we start our trade. And they're going to be looking over the fence at a much greener grass, but they can join on our terms under our new constitution. And I defy anybody to tell me, apart from law talk, about how Canada's so great. Canada was great. I love Canada. But I'm a realist, and I'm seeing a U.S. president that's saying you are hosting a foreign interference that is actually unraveling our trust in your nation, in the nation, and you're becoming a security threat to our northern border.
I guess the hiccup I would see in the issue is there is a lot of support for the monarchy in Canada, and that's probably a big difference between Canadian and American conservatism. Do you think you'd run into issues trying to implement a republic?
Well, I think that we need to be honest about the legislation that's actually out there from the monarch, because in 1931, the British monarch severed all sovereignty over Canada, and particularly transferred that sovereignty to the Canadian provinces. But what happened was that got absorbed in central Canada, and we never actually transacted that mandate. So in international law, that is the answer. That is the legitimacy to the legal mandate to self-determine and establish a constitutional republic. And we need to look at that. And some people say, and this is a really important conversation right now in Alberta, because some people say the Westminster Act 1931 is quackery. But I'll tell you what, the people of the Republic of Ireland were given their liberty and freedom to establish a constitutional republic from the British Empire in 1931 under the same piece of legislation, and they've lived under a constitutional republic for the last 96 years.
I guess just to wrap it up here, bringing it closer to home, what's your thoughts on just being one of the 216 candidates in this race?
Well, I don't feel like I am one of the 216 candidates, because I think the long candidate committee has been a frustration for the people of Battle River-Crowfoot. And if you really want to interrogate that issue, I would say that projects like that benefit the person who has the most name recognition. And I'll leave you to figure out who has the most name recognition, because then people can just say, hey, you know what? There's a lot of noise. We don't need to think about it. We have an excuse just to do the same thing we've always done. We've had 70 years of conservative thinking, and look where we're at in this nation. So I'm very suspect about what the actual purpose of the Long Ballot Committee was. And I think that you saw 9 candidates here tonight. Mr. Poilievre chose to send in a message, whatever. But I don't acknowledge the Long Candidates Committee, and I think it's an abuse of the democratic process, because if you have one agent, that to me actually begins to form a party agenda, and we all know that under the Elections Canada Act, a party should only have one candidate on the ballot. And I think that's going to have to be reviewed, because the goodwill of the Elections Canada Act has been taken advantage of.
Well, thanks for this today, Grant.
Thank you very much.
Best of luck.